Good morning, afternoon or evening wherever you are. I'm Paul Clark and welcome to my studio. Now, what have I got for you lovely lot today? Well, from my recent Q&A, I'll link up here if you haven't seen it, I had loads of you requesting a tutorial using black watercolour paper. Black watercolour. It's not going to work. Ridiculous. How can... Mind you, it does say on the cover here, black watercolour paper. So, we're going to have a go at this lovely nighttime scene of a tram and this little blackbird using black watercolour paper. So, come and join me and we'll have a go at painting these step by step together. Okay, so I've purchased a couple of brands of black watercolour paper. Now this is a £140 A3 size made by Royal Talens, their Van Gogh range, and it's a smooth surface. And this smaller size, Etival by Clairefontaine, which is a cold press surface, also £140. It's so black, how much more black can it be? And the answer is none. None more black. So let's do a little test, and I'm starting by using my standard transparent watercolours. So here with some cobalt blue, transparent orange, dioxazine purple, viridian green, alizarin crimson and some pyro red. Now for some semi-opaque colours with cadmium yellow and then some yellow ochre. And you can see they start by being fairly bright, but once dry, all a bit disappointing, as would be expected really. So next I'm going to try these Japanese Kuretake set, which I recently reviewed on this channel. Now these are not conventional watercolours and are known for being very opaque. So let's try them out. Now I've just taken a random selection of colours and I can see already how much more they are showing up, especially those lighter colours. Now this set includes a white and 3 metallic colours, which really show up well, and those 2 gold colours are rather spectacular, I have to say. Now the non-metallic colours have lost a little bit once dried, but they're still not bad. Okay, so now for the final test with some gouache, which is known as a totally opaque watercolour, having the addition of a white extender to give it that solid feel. Very much like the poster paint we used to use at school. So I'm now applying this quite thickly, and as you can see that it dries slightly lighter, but still very much brighter than the watercolours, which of course is very much to be expected. So I asked Margot to have a play around with the gouache, and she came up with this, which I think is lovely, and it shows you can still very much get those wet in wet blends. So stick around until the end, as I've got a short tutorial on painting with gouache. Right, so just before starting I thought I'd have a quick 10-minute splash around with these Kuretake paints. Nothing in particular, just see how things work. Now this was great fun, but you really do need to get your head around working in a different way. It's quite effective, still with all lots of lovely wet in wet blends. Right, so today's project is this tram at night, which I believe is in Lisbon. So I've sketched it out using a white pastel pencil, but you could just use a standard watercolour pencil. Off we go! And I'm starting by using a watery mix of yellow ochre and cadmium yellow using my number 12 brush. Now, I must explain about a slight technical issue here, because as I apply the wet washes, they are picking up quite a reflection from the studio lights. But as they begin to dry, you'll notice the colour seems to deaden and disappear. So it's quite a challenge to get enough pigment onto the paper to show up. Here I'm just adding a little warmth with some burnt sienna. Again here you can see a lovely bright yellow, but it's going to dry much duller. Now I'm finding it hard to get really good coverage on this black paper. I'm having to paint with a very thick consistency, so I'm using very little water in all these mixes. Here I'm splatting in a mix of white and yellow ochre to try and create a cobbled texture, and then just smoothing out a touch with my brush. So more and more I'm finding I'm having to add white into the mixes for the colour to have any real chance of showing up. So now we need to let this totally dry. So it's a perfect time for a short break, and as I'm still doing a dry January, a nice cup of Earl Grey. Now, I did go a whole 12 years once without having a drink, and then I had my 13th birthday party. So, more texture in the road here, and you can be quite bold here because it's always going to dry that much lighter or duller. Now, I'm really finding it quite a battle for some of these colours to show up, so I'm really having to add multiple layers. And again, because I'm painting this in the evening, there's still a lot of reflections from the studio lights, so you're not really seeing the true colours until each layer dries. Because I'm really having to layer the colours and paint with a very thick consistency, the whole painting is beginning to have more of an acrylic style look, without any real feeling of watercolour transparency, which I know we all love so much. Which leads me to think that the whole thing would have probably been better using gouache in the first place, or even acrylic. Again, you can see I'm using a lot of white in these mixes. Now, definitely here we're looking at getting through that ugly stage. Here's some really thick cadmium yellow straight out the pan. Now, let me know what you think, because as an exercise in using watercolour with black paper, I think this is a fail. Because I don't see this having any of the essence of watercolour at all, fun though it may be. Here I'm tipping my board and letting the paint run down. And you can see here also more of the true colours when the studio lights aren't directly above. So now to get some black details back, I'm using a black permanent marker. Thick cadmium yellow again. Okay, so now I'm going to use some gouache, nice and thick straight from the tube, and I'm using my smaller number 6 brush for this, and it's these lovely white highlights that can often bring the painting to life. So the whole painting has taken on quite a shiny feel to it because of the thickness of paint, and as I mentioned, there's still a lot of reflection under the studio lights. So I've decided to sign it next morning under natural light to show you what the actual colours look like. Now that was fun and I definitely learnt a lot, but not my best. Although I do quite like the texture in the road. So what better to paint on black paper than a blackbird? And this time it's on the Etival cold press paper, and I'm going to be using gouache. Simple little sketch using a white pastel pencil, then off we go. So starting with the background, I'm going for the wet and wet effect. So I'm doing my usual technique of wetting with clean water and dropping in greens and yellows and whites, even a touch of red into the wash to create this lovely soft background. Very much the same as I do with my conventional watercolours, and all done with my number 12 brush. And it's very much a negative painting exercise, leaving the bird in total black. And already you can see how much brighter and opaque the paint can be. So let me know in the comments below if you would like a full tutorial on painting with gouache. Could be interesting. A little touch of dark brown just along the top edge of the branch, and then subtly blending in with a little white. Okay, so for his body I'm painting in a very watery white and softening it into the body with my brush. This all needs to be very subtle. And I'm just dabbing out here with a dry tissue. Now using my smaller number 6 brush for his beak and eye with some yellow. And a little touch of orange underneath. Now for his legs and claws, and this is some yellow ochre with a few dabs of white here and there. And here with a little touch of black. And a few white finishing touches. Black waterproof pen here for a few feathery details. There we go, all done and in about an hour. Well, I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did and you give working on black paper a go. I mean, if anything, it is really a good exercise in understanding your tonal values. So if you're interested in trying some of the paper that I've used in today's tutorials, there is a link below in the description. We're not sponsored by any of these companies, but we do get a small commission. So as ever, please don't forget to like, subscribe if you haven't already. It is free. Leave a comment. I do read every single one. And of course, I look forward to seeing you all again next week for another Watercolour Wednesday. Take care now, everyone.